All right, everyone, I am no longer on vacation, back to the normal schedule. It's actually kind of relaxing to do that because then you do some editing and, more videos and it's fun. And being ambitious is great. Got to talk about this massive hurricane that might hit Hawaii. Unfortunately, the storm tracker still has it about tomorrow at some point. The outer bands are going to start hitting the southernmost Hawaiian island, the big island. Not long after, it looks like it's going to curve around and basically follow the actual shape of the Hawaiian islands. This is not good. And while it, I think, weakened slightly overnight, it's going to be a freakishly powerful storm. And some people, I think the big risk right now is some people appear to be considering it a joke. They're like, oh yeah, Hawaii always gets a lot of rain and stuff, don't worry about it. This is not your mom's storm. Some of these people may never have really experienced a true hurricane, certainly not on this order. The problem is it's similar to what happened in Vermont with what was then just a weak tropical storm, which was Irene. It had degraded as it went over land. Second link in the description is actually to a YouTube video I uploaded the day after Irene scoured all of Vermont. What happens is, in an area that's, like Florida, southern Texas, something that's pretty flat, the water will pool up, but it doesn't create raging torrents in the same way. If you've got a flat area, the whole area may flood, but it's slowly receding out. At the very least, it's not surging down the road, destroying everything in its path like a torrent. Essentially, when a quick-moving river is going down your entire town's main street, that's when you've got problems. If it's just flooded, yeah, we saw what happened in New Orleans. It can certainly cause major issues. But the damage, oddly enough, can be less. The problem is that Hawaii is a chain of volcanic islands. That means that people settling near the coast mostly, sometimes they're near little tributaries, little outlets for water that's draining off of those volcanic mountains, so to speak. Those can go from a cute little stream where Moana is singing happily and people are roasting pineapples to a massive infernal sort of surge of water that destroys everything for a half mile on either side. That's really going to be the problem if you're getting more of the heavy rain than heavy wind. And keep in mind, some hurricanes are either. Like when Houston was hit I think it was last year at this point. Now, you'll remember, massive flooding, wind damage relatively less. The storm was basically just a giant blob of rain that came surging down. I think they got some insane amount, like 11 inches over the course of a day, or some insane total. This happens sometimes during monsoon season in parts of Asia, now where they get a fucking foot of rain and it's insane, and yeah, that kind of rhymes, but it's not really that funny. But people should probably do a little bit more prep. Some people are like, oh yeah, I got water, some canned food and stuff. You might want a little bit more than that, because it might take a while. If the roads and bridges get destroyed by sort of the natural little streams and eddies that you have, turning from a little stream, hey, it's 3 feet wide, it's 300 feet wide. What can happen is you have massive infrastructure damage. And it could take a very long time to fully restore the availability of goods. Even the power will be back on, maybe. Goods will be available. The stores will be open, but for some days or weeks thereafter, you could have shortages. Especially in Hawaii, just think, you're islands. So aid has to be carted in. It's not like there's a disaster zone in Texas. Okay, put shit on a train, it can be there tomorrow. It's more like put shit on planes, hope that the airport is still capable of functioning, by the way, and the ports aren't gone so that the ships can dock and so people can have access to goods. You probably want some spare toilet paper. You probably want some spare flashlights, and don't forget the batteries. And one important thing, because there's always going to be one person that neglects this, it's not just the canned goods. Make sure you've got a can opener. Maybe a second one in case the first one breaks. Hell, maybe a bunch of river rats come up out of the water and infest everything, and you break your fucking can opener trying to hit them over the head to keep them away from, the food that you do have. That could be a problem. I mean, you can eat them, you can roast them on a spit, I guess. Wouldn't be too tasty, though. So people need to prepare more. One thing that I've heard, and I don't know, maybe someone can vouch for whether this is true. Is it true that some people stock Bud Light? We know the water is the first thing to run out in the stores in prep for some disaster that might be coming. So people just buy like a 30 rack of Bud Light, and they're like, well, it's basically water anyway. You just don't drink too much of it and get like, totally drunk. Although, you're gonna pass the time somehow. There's no power. What else are you gonna do? Only screw so many times, I suppose, in one go, and go hunting. Again, for all the weird animals that have washed up. Maybe there'll be like crabs and shit that surge up out of the ocean, and you can have a clam bake or something. That'd be tasty. But yeah, people need to be aware this is not a small hurricane. It's happened to us in this state, mountain-wise. All that water gets funneled into the valley. The problem is a lot of people tend to live in valleys. Here in Vermont, it's the only place you do live. Mountains are more or less pristine other than some second homes that some multi-million-dollar rich tourists have put up in some condominium developments. Otherwise, not much happening up there in the higher peaks. The problem is then they concentrate in areas where the water is getting funneled into. In Hawaii, a lot of the major developed areas, basically they're near one of those sources of fresh water. They're coming down out of the mountains. Therefore, you have water that's maybe, just a little bit brackish, but it's potable. And so you have the problem where that exit for the water gets overwhelmed potentially, and everything on either side is destroyed. Unfortunately, that's also where a lot of your major bridges are. If they are destroyed, that could bring havoc to the islands where it is. Therefore, I think people should make sure you have that extra liter of cola. You have the extra toilet paper. You might need it. I mean, you could use like leaves and shit, but who wants to do that? You're already without power and maybe without steady food for 3 or 4 days. You don't want to have to shit in the woods. It's the small comforts that you're really going to want. That's about all. Peace out.